name is Orwa Nyrabia, and it's beautiful to be back on this stage.
Woo!
So, a new IDFA is beginning, and a new IDFA is coming after a very difficult year, but a very meaningful one too. We had, and the world had, a very difficult year. All of this made me think a lot about who I am, and about who we are. Who is IDFA? Who is documentary film? What does it stand for? And why do we do this thing that we do? As those who are returning to this opening, who attended other openings before, you might know that I usually speak, well, I put myself a maximum of 5 minutes to speak. As this is my last time, I'm asking permission to speak for 15 minutes. It was not easy trying to figure out what to say during such times. In a way, also, there is so much responsibility in saying things. And there is so much also expectations, and there is so much contradictory expectations. And there are people who try to control what I say.
Oh, wow.
And there is a lot of censorship going around. And there's a lot of self-censorship going around. It's a difficult time. And the point to me is to think of film, of cinema, of us meeting together as a way to help us all deal with this difficulty in a meaningful way, without simplification, without cheapening it. And while I try to understand who I am and who we are as documentary people who come to this city and to the world and try to connect with everybody, I did the old school thing. I looked at my roots. How does this work? It works something like this. This year we are celebrating a late icon of Cuban cinema. Her name was Sara Gomez. Sara Gomez died years back, and she was very young when she died. But before that, she made a number of films that we are screening at the festival in Cuba, her home country. Sara was the very first Afro-Cuban filmmaker in history, and was the very first woman filmmaker in her country too. She was a revolutionary. She believed in the Cuban Revolution. And she went to make films about the accomplishments of the revolution, and then she put the camera in front of people, and she saw all the promises, all the great appearances of revolution, and then the camera helped her see beyond the facade, and she kept on seeing behind that. And when she saw behind the facade of what looks great, she found a lot of problems. And the revolutionary filmmaker was censored, and she was banned. And today, we are, all of us in the film world, are rediscovering her. She was forgotten. Sara Gomez became so interested in this art form because when she was very young, another filmmaker came to visit her country, and that was Agnes Varda. And when Agnes Varda visited Cuba, the young Sara Gomez was invited to be her assistant. She carried that from Varda. Varda, the great French filmmaker, who was and still is a pioneer, a woman who inspired generations of women filmmakers around the world with her work, and who left a mark that is unforgettable. And we will have a retrospective of her film work at Head Documentary Pavilion early next year. She left a mark because she also did not do what was expected of her. She was one of the influential filmmakers of the 1968 student movement. Agnes Varda decided to go from the high production values of France, where she was, and to go with no money and make films with the Black Panthers in the USA, and then went to Cuba and made a film in Cuba, where Sarah was her assistant. Back in Paris, Agnes Varda was working very closely with a group. She was not alone. There was a movement. One of the filmmakers of this movement was the influential Chris Marker. Chris Marker made many films that inspire filmmakers everywhere until today. And for years he worked on Chile. Chile, a country that elected a president democratically in 1970, and then basically the CIA funded or supported a coup d'etat against him, and there was dictatorship. So when a young filmmaker in Chile at that time, by the name of Patricio Guzman, wanted to make a film and didn't have money, he wrote to Chris Marker in France, told him, I have no money. Would you help me make a film? And then Marker sent him a box in the post, a box that had film stock and film material so that he can make a film. The film that Guzman did with this material is now one of the iconic films of Latin America. It's called The Battle of Chile. He would have never made it if not for that. Friend, in a totally different continent, who supported him and who reached out. Like Guzman did this in Latin America, there was in India a great filmmaker, Anant Patwardhan, a winner of many IDFA awards over the past few years. Patwardhan is a very special filmmaker. He's the brother of Guzman on the other side of the globe. He makes very courageous films, political critiques so strong, with very strong aesthetics, and he stands very strongly against the massive violence against Muslims in India today. He does not keep a low voice. And you know what he does? Patwardhan does not accept to get funding. He makes his films with no money. He sells the film, then he finances the next film with that money. He works with the bare minimum, so that nobody can say that his opinion is tainted by anybody's money. Like Patwardhan, in the Arab region, there was Omar Amir Alai. He is the parallel there too. Amir Alai was my mentor, he was my friend, and he made films that in a way caused that he was exiled for years, but he did not stop making his films. And when there was a revolution in Syria, one of the first things that the regime did to show people, to show us that it wants to de-escalate, was actually to allow us to show the films of Amir Alai, the film they did not allow us to see before. All of these filmmakers were affected by the eldest one, the first who thought about documentary cinema as an art, and that is Dziga Vertov. Dziga Vertov was an Ukrainian of Polish origin who was very enthusiastic about the Bolshevik revolution in 1917, and he made films, direct cinema there. He was inventing what filmmaking is. Nobody made that before him, really. But his films celebrating the revolution were actually censored and banned by the revolution, because there was no interest in what really reality was. There was an interest in how we would like to be showing it. Following that, Vertov made some of the founding films of this art, the films that made everybody think, I want to make a documentary film. One of those who were directly influenced by his work was from the Netherlands. That was Joris Evans. Joris Evans, who is probably the filmmaker that the Netherlands or Dutch film history is most proud of, who affected many around the world, including myself, was really a fighter. He went to Hollywood and he did not like it there. But some of the most interesting stories of Joris Ivens started when he was hired during the World War II, to help with making propaganda films for the US Army. He took the job of making a film that explains why we should be fighting Japan. The title was Know Your Enemy. And then he went to make a film about why Japan is enemy. And he ended up making a film that says that Japanese people are beautiful people. There's this terrible emperor on top of them, but they are really lovely people. And the US Army media team, the propaganda team at the time, were so angry they fired Joris Ivens. And they managed to re-edit the film in a way that they liked better, in a way that helped show that we have to fight them. He got a job after that in Indonesia. He was hired to make films about the kicking out the Japanese army, basically, from Indonesia. And he could not resist. On the job, he went on and made the most important, iconic film of the Indonesian liberation history, Indonesia Calling. He spent years after that not allowed to visit or to return to his home country, to the Netherlands. It was okay. And I don't think anybody would have remembered Joris Ivens if he made the authorities happy and did what they asked him to do. But he never did. 30, 40 years after Joris Ivens, there was Johan van der Kuyp, my favorite of this lot. And Johan van der Kuyp made beautiful films. He was going around the world and in the Netherlands, making films about poor people, about oppressed people, about hardworking people, about their beauty and about their pain. Amazing aesthetics, revolutionary rhythm in his filmmaking. And then he made one film in 1974 that he spoke a lot about this film, because he used to say, this is the only film that made me tune down my aesthetic approach. Because the pain I was looking at with my camera was so big, I could not think the same way. I had to sit down and watch and listen. The title of that film was The Palestinians. Mm-hmm. And it was a tough film to make. And he made it. And he was very, very critical at the time and loud in his critique to the way that Dutch society understood the Palestinian problem. But that was 1974. Years later, 20 years later, he made the masterpiece, Amsterdam Global Village. Amsterdam Global Village is the film where Johan van der Kuyp saw and showed us an Amsterdam where everybody is different and everybody is equal. No first class, no second class. Everybody is an Amsterdammer in a city that is a global village. And this sense of equality, this sense of mutual love, the same level of belonging, and a city that loves all of its citizens, was something inspiring, and it was documentary. This is what I see when I try to understand what is it that I do here and what is it that IDFA is. These are our elders. This is the lineage, the genealogy of what we do. There are many others, and there are some in this room here. I would like to welcome them. So can we have the house light, please? Light? Where are you? I want to welcome very much Laura Poitras. Laura Poitras kept on tracking crimes that happened by the US Army around the world, or US authorities, and made brilliant, award-winning films that we all watched without any compromise. And that put her in this, automatically, algorithms found out that she's dangerous. And when it did that, it ended up with her being quite crucial in the story of Edward Snowden. She held his hand at the first moments of what he did and what changed our lives and our world entirely. The revelations of Edward Snowden were not something that Laura was afraid to do. So many people were unhappy. And she had to stay away, and she had to use so many burner phones, it was very difficult to call her. We had to call friends to call friends to call Laura. We all around the world had to sign statements defending that she has the right to go back to her country, to the USA. She did not compromise. She said what she believed she should say, and she did it, and she went for it. It does happen so that next to her now is Radu Zhutu. Radu, welcome to IDFA. Radu is 6 months older than me. So he had 6 more months to become wise. But whenever he gets a microphone on stage, he does everything that you are advised not to do as a filmmaker. You're always taught to make them like you and to tell them that they're great so that they give you money to make your next film. And he always stands there, like in his films, with his very, very singular artistic approach. Also his voice keeps coming out to say, I am who I am. I'm not here to compromise, and I'll not do what you do or what you want me to do. Many other people are here in the cinema. I want to see if Jbali, Muhammad Jbali, are you here? Did he make it? Muhammad Jbali. Muhammad Jbali is the winner of last year's Best Director Award at IDFA with his film Life is Beautiful. Jbali comes from Gaza. Everybody heard of Gaza? It's famous. His family is still there. And last year, Jbali accepted to stay in IDFA. And I know how tough that was on him. But he told us something at the end, at the award ceremony, that I will never forget. He said, it's because IDFA is my family. And when my family hurts me, I will have to tell you that. You hurt